has turned on the seatbelt light. Please take your seat and fasten your seatbelts. Thank you.
You can create checklists to keep track of work related to your uploaded Flare projects. These are different from checklists you might create using some other tool. That's because these checklists are integrated with your Flare projects and therefore can populate part of your checklists automatically. After you open a Flare project in Central, click the Checklists option on the right side of the page. Then click the plus button in the toolbar at the top. After you give the checklist a name, pick the type of checklist you want to create, either project files or a generic list. A project file checklist has to do with specific files in your project. Topics are probably the most common files to include in checklists, but you can add any other files throughout your project if you like. You also have the option of choosing a template that you've created previously. We'll come back to templates shortly. For now, we'll leave this field alone. A description is something else that you can provide for a checklist. On the Columns tab below, you can type on the column labels for your checklist. These can be whatever types of activity you want to track for each file. The icons to the right of each column let you delete or change the position of each column. When you're done, click the Rows tab. You'll see check marks next to your project with folders and files. Just click the items you want to include in the checklist. If you have many files in your project but only want to include some of them, you might find it useful to begin by removing check marks from folders. Then navigate down and choose the specific files you want. A new project file checklist might look something like this. If you choose Generic List as the type, you can manually enter both the column and row labels for the checklist. You can create generic checklists for random things you need to accomplish, such as a product release to-do list. A new generic checklist might look something like this. All of your checklists for the project are listed on the left side of the page, showing the overall percentage of completion for each. To open a checklist, just click in this area. In each cell of the checklist, you can right-click the circle and choose a status as your work progresses. Aside from the default to-do status, you can select In Progress, Complete, or NA for Not Applicable. If you left-click a circle, a status is automatically applied, and you can continue to click in order to cycle through the rest of your statuses until you find the one you want. Finally, you can click this button on each column to quickly set the same status for each row in that column. In addition, you can use the Note field to enter any comments or other information you want to provide for each row. Another option you have is to click the button in a column and pin it to the right or left. For example, maybe you want to move the Note column so that it's next to the Items column. If you change your mind, you can unpin the column. As you change the status for your checklist cells, the area at the top is adjusted to give you an idea of how much you've completed and how much more you need to do. If you created a project file checklist, you can click each folder to display the subfolders and files under it. A trail of breadcrumbs lets you navigate back to any previous folders or to the top level. If you need to make changes to your checklist, perhaps to modify some columns or choose additional project files, you can click this button in the toolbar. And this button will let you delete a checklist. But here's a question. What if you tend to use the same kinds of checklists over and over? Maybe you have the same rows and notes in each checklist, and you don't want to have to retype all of that text every time you create a new checklist. Well, that's where templates come in. To create a new template, click this button in the toolbar. This opens the Template Manager. You can complete the same fields that are used when creating a new checklist. The main difference is that the Rows tab isn't available if you've selected project files as the type. That's because the project files won't be determined until you create each checklist. When you're finished, click Save. The new template is added to the left side. If you ever need to make changes to a template, just select it on the left side and edit the fields. You can click Save and Done if you want to keep your changes and close the Template Manager at the same time. You can also create a template from an existing checklist. To do this, click this button to edit the checklist. Then click Save as Template. Once you have a template, you can select it when creating a new checklist. All you need to do is give the checklist a name, edit any of the fields if you want, and save. Another good thing about templates is that they're available for any projects across your license. They're not limited to any particular project. One final note before we go. Although there is not currently any software integration between project checklists and tasks, you might find it helpful to create your own associations between the two as part of your overall workflow. For example, maybe you're documenting a new release for your company's software project. In addition to many other tasks that you've created in Central, you can add one to remind yourself to complete a final checklist before you publish the output. When creating this task, instead of listing all of the things you need to do, you simply enter the URL for the checklist in your task description. Later, if you click on that URL in the task, the checklist will open in your browser. Once you finish the checklist, you can return to the tasks page to move the task card to the completed milestone.